Hello, everybody. Welcome to Relax with Animal Facts. I am Steph Wolf, and I'm here to learn some facts with you about our furry, scaly, or possibly even slimy friends, all while relaxing and sometimes going a little off topic. So, right off the bat, I don't know if you can hear it in my voice, but I'm in this weird sort of limbo between kind of being sick and being 100%. So, I'm not totally sick or anything, but, just so you're aware, that's what is going on here. I would have uploaded or done a podcast yesterday, but at that point my throat hurt too much. So here I am, new and improved, not totally improved, but just a little bit. So some quick things before we get into this episode of our show, which is the awesome Kangaroo. That is something that I do not know very much about. So first things first, social media. I, as of now, have opened up a Twitter account where I will be posting polls for different animals that maybe you guys want to see and you can vote on and whatnot. So if you guys can follow me on Twitter at RWAF Podcast. That's Relax with Animal Facts Podcast. So RWAF Podcast. That's the at. And it's under Steph Wolf is like the name there. So you guys can hit me up with a follow. If you have any questions or anything, you could always tweet at me, and I will do my best to respond as quickly as possible. And so let's get into how you guys can listen to the show. So for any of you new guys out there, so this is I think episode 12 or 13, something like that. And there's so many different ways you can listen to the podcast. It seems as though a majority of you like to just put this on before you go to bed. That is entirely encouraged. It can help you get to sleep if you'd like, or you could just be listening attentively. Maybe you want to go, just kind of take your mind off work or school or whatnot, and you can find some comfy spot to sit, maybe a nice chair, a nice couch, or you could even be walking out and about. It is all entirely up to you guys. Any form of listening to this podcast and learning about animals and shifting your focus to something really good, is entirely encouraged. And if you guys hear about any animals that you specifically enjoy, or maybe there's an animal that strikes you that you've never heard before, or that you didn't know would strike you, and that strikes a little bit of a passion in you, and you would like to go and research more, or maybe watch some documentaries or some TV shows, that is entirely encouraged. So before we get into the podcast, I'm going to just really quickly say where I got my facts from. So I got the majority of my facts from, I'm going to say, pbs.org and from onekindplanet.org. For the kangaroo, it seemed as though there were a lot of conflicting facts about them, specifically to do with their physical characteristics, such as how fast they run, how tall they grow. I don't really know why that there was a discrepancy there, but we'll get into exactly all that in just a second. So if there's anything that seems, maybe you're from Australia, I know that I have a few Australian listeners out there. If there's something there that you disagree with or whatnot, you could always follow that Twitter account or send me an email or whatnot, and we'll correct it on next episode. So thank you guys so much for tuning in, and let's get into the show. So when people think about kangaroos, they tend to think about the main four. These are referred to, I believe, as the great kangaroo. But there are 12 species in total. But the four species that people mainly think about, you have the red kangaroo, the antilopine kangaroo, sorry if I butchered that, the eastern gray and western gray kangaroos. But there are 12 species of tree kangaroos, and that involves even an animal named the betong, which is often referred to as the rat kangaroo. So 12 species of tree kangaroo, I would have never guessed. But when I did think about kangaroos, I would have thought that mostly maximum they had 2 species. But there you go, they have 4, and of those 4, you have the red kangaroo, which is the largest in terms of height. They can grow up to about 2 meters, which is around 6'6". So if you can imagine a kangaroo hopping around, and they can hop around very, very quickly. They can go, as fast as a racehorse, as written here. I don't know if that's ever been done, if a racehorse has gone against a kangaroo, but they can go incredibly quickly, and again, like I said before, the sources were a little bit, this or that. It wasn't exactly, because there were some sources that said around 40 kilometers an hour. There were some sources that said 60. In this case, PBS said that they can go at a top speed of around 60 kilometers an hour, which for hopping, that is incredibly fast. I can't even imagine a kangaroo going that fast. Maybe I'll go on YouTube and look at some videos after the podcast, but that is incredibly quick. But the red kangaroo is not the heaviest kangaroo. I forgot which one is the heaviest one. I believe it's the eastern gray or the western gray kangaroo that are the heaviest. I think it's eastern gray, but regardless, the red kangaroos are kind of the largest there. They can grow to be at around 200 pounds, and in one leap they can jump around 3 meters high. So 3 meters high. That is a very large height. That's a very high vertical. I think that kangaroos would do well in the NBA. Well, I mean, yeah, in the NBA. But they can also jump around 7.6 meters in length. So they would be good at long jump. These guys would just be good at all sports. But in general, kangaroos. So while the red kangaroo can grow up to be around 2 meters, around 6'6", their heights kind of range between the 3 to 8 foot sort of ranges there. I believe the largest kangaroo was over 7 feet tall, just under 8 feet tall. I don't remember when it was actually when that was discovered. Must have been a long time ago. I feel like that would have been in the news. I would have known about it, but I think it was on PBS that they said just under that 8 feet mark, 8 foot mark. When feeding, kangaroos do a sort of a walking movement, and for that they will use their muscular tail as sort of a fifth leg to be able to push off the ground as they move. So I've seen this before. I haven't really seen too many. I've seen a lot of nature documentaries on Netflix, but I haven't actually seen kangaroos doing this walking movement before, or maybe I just haven't seen a kangaroo-specific documentary. So they're able to change up the pace. They don't have to always be jumping everywhere. They can use their tail as like an extra appendage to be able to just push themselves around. And because their tail is incredibly muscular, it has to be, because it's an important part of how they actually fight between in interpersonal conflict or with any potential threat. They use their tail to kind of prop themselves up. We'll talk about how they fight in just 1 second. The smallest kangaroo, so we talked about the red kangaroo, which is the largest marsupial. The smallest kangaroo is the musky rat kangaroo, which is only about 6 to 8 inches long and weighs about 12 ounces. So that's around 340 grams. 6 to 8 inches long, that is excluding the tail, but 6 to 8 inches is not a very large animal. I mean, when you compare it to, of course, it's all relative, right? Because nature has there's so many different animals that are of completely different sizes. But in terms of kangaroo species, 6 to 8 inches long is not at all what you imagine, or at least most of us imagine. Maybe there's some biologists out there that know a lot more about kangaroos than I do from Googling these facts here, but 6 to 8 inches long in comparison to the red kangaroo, which is what I more imagined, which is kind of that around 6 foot, 6'6", so incredibly large marsupials. But surprisingly, there's a species of kangaroo that is just like that, a 6 foot long sub. I'm thinking about food now. It's kind of the morning time. I'm a little hungry here, but I'll eat after the show. The majority of kangaroos live on the continent of Australia, so this is fairly common knowledge. When you think about kangaroos, or at least when I think about kangaroos, I think about the beautiful Australia. But for example, grey kangaroos can actually be found in the forests of Tasmania as well. So they aren't just found in Australia. They're most species, and they're primarily found in Australia, but they can be found in kind of islands surrounding Australia, including places like Tasmania, so the forests of Tasmania specifically. And tree kangaroos live in the upper branches of trees in the rainforests of Queensland, as well as the island of New Guinea. So that's another kind of fact as to drive home the point that they don't 100% all exclusively live in Australia. On land, we're gonna go just a few. We're gonna go kind of some quick facts. Might go on a few asides, but in general, we're gonna do some more specific kind of facts here. So on land, kangaroos only ever move their hind legs together. That you don't really see them doing very often, moving their legs independently on land, because they need to produce this jumping movement, because that is their primary form of locomotion. However, in water, they are very good swimmers, something that I wouldn't have really thought of. I just never imagined a kangaroo swimming ever, but they kick each leg independently to swim. So I'm trying to imagine right now a kangaroo swimming. So because they hop around everywhere, I would have imagined they do more of a breaststroke sort of movement with their legs. So that sort of that almost frog sort of motion, right, with their legs, because they use their hind legs together. But it looks as if land kangaroos also prefer the doggy paddle to switching it up to a different form of swimming there. So super interesting that these animals are good at swimming. I imagine that their centers of gravity would make it incredibly difficult for them to be able to swim efficiently, just like we talked about before in previous episodes with many primates, for example, with gorillas or orangutans. They have a very different center of gravity than humans do. So if you guys haven't listened to those episodes, they're some of my favorites, personal favorites. So after the show, if you have time, you can go and listen, or just another time. They have a very different center of gravity than humans do, which makes it incredibly difficult for them to, no matter how much they practice or how much Michael Phelps they watch on the TV, they will always have a difficult time swimming, because their anatomy is not made for efficient swimming. It's made more for swinging through branches and kind of locomotion on land, more arboreal sort of living. But kangaroos, I thought they were sort of in that same boat in terms of having difficulty swimming because of anatomical sort of predisposition. But in this case, it's absolutely wrong, and that's what I love about this show. I always learn so many new things about different animals, and I'm able to get past all these these thoughts I had about these some of these animals. Right? It'll completely change my view on so many aspects of their daily living, and I love that. I'm just gonna have a quick sip of my my decaf coffee here. No tea this time. That's weird. The one episode that I'm actually a little sick, I'm not drinking tea. That's interesting. Let's move on. So kangaroos are social. They're very social animals, and they live in groups. And I always like to see what these groups are called. So they're often called mobs, herds, or troops. Mobs. I don't think we've had an animal on the show that are in groups called mobs. I could be wrong. But troops. Gorillas also have troops in terms of groups. So I still have not searched up who decides to name the groups in which these animals live in. Who decides that? I guess it's just whatever scientist is kind of there at that time that is leading the charge in terms of research with that particular animal. I'm not really sure. But they will groom each other and protect one another from danger. So we see here an advantage to being social and being in groups. So the adaptive advantage of being in groups is very, very is substantial, because just like in humans, we in the past had to live in groups because we were in the food chain just like everything else. And in the case now where we're living in this modern world, we're just sort of it's as if we're not even on the food chain in a way. It's like we're outside of it and we just control everything that's inside. But that's not always how, things were. We had to be in groups to survive because there were real, actual threats in terms of predation with, from big cats or from whatever it be. So being in groups really helps animals be safe, and in nature, it's all about survival and reproduction. Animals have the reason that they live really is to be able to reproduce. That is what animals kind of strive for. You'll see even in many studies where animals prefer mating to food, and they will voluntarily starve if it gives them the chance to carry on their lineage there. So it's a really interesting kind of thing. So in the case of getting a little bit off track here, but I just love how nature works. It really fires a passion in me there. But they live in groups. Okay, so let's go back to what we were talking about. They live in groups to protect one another from danger and to help keep each other clean in terms of grooming. And when a kangaroo suspects danger, I think this is really interesting, it will stomp its feet on the ground to alert others of a potential or possibly a real threat. So they will alert one another that something is about to happen or is happening currently. And when it comes to fighting, so say the potential danger has really come in their case, when it comes to fighting, they will box and kick their opponent. So they have incredibly strong legs, and they swing their arms around very quickly too, and they'll kind of prop themselves up on their tail to be able to kick out really quickly or to punch. So they use that fifth limb to, well, not a fifth limb, but they use it as a fifth limb to be able to do things like that. So these animals are very, I would say, they show these kind of alpha male characteristics in a way that's really interesting to me, which is that they box and they kick sort of like their own MMA fight sort of thing. And I that's why I love these guys, is because they're so unique. How many animals will throw their hands around at each other to box? Maybe monkeys don't really box as much as they do just kind of pound, like put their arms up and then slam their arms back down. But kangaroos do engage in this sort of behavior, and it's not just with potential threats. It's also with interpersonal conflicts we see for mating rights, right? So they will have competition between males, and they will box and kick each other. And males really enjoy showing off. So a study by the Linnaean Society, it showed that female kangaroos really do prefer males that have a little bit more muscle. And the research has shown that male kangaroos with larger biceps, in fact, were having a higher success with mating. So large biceps, that to me is just very funny, because with human beings, sometimes we'll see that individuals really pride themselves on having big biceps. It's like their pride with their kind of having muscle mass. And with kangaroos, it's sort of that similar thing. You can actually spot kangaroos flexing their guns to attract attention, which is awesome. I love these guys. It's adorable to me that they kind of have flex offs sometimes, or they not flex offs, but they will kind of flex to show females what they have going on. And with this study, I didn't research too much into the study in terms of what the population size was. What were there any control variables? I have no idea in terms of the integrity of the studies, or of this study particularly. But I just thought it was an interesting fact. So that was from mentalfloss.com. That one, I think that was the only fact I got from Mental Floss there. Kangaroos are the only large animal to use hopping as their primary method of locomotion. So we know that, we talked about how kangaroos hop everywhere, but hopping is a fast and energy-efficient means of traveling. And it allows them to cover large distances where there might not be very much food or water available. So, instead of running, they're kind of just jumping to clear space, or like more space with less energy. But that is what they're built for. I'm sure if human beings were to jump everywhere, we would be absolutely exhausted as opposed to just walking somewhere. Like if you were to walk to the grocery store, I think that would be much easier than if you were to hop all the way there. I think you would be sweating. You might not even make it a quarter way. So they are, they're built for it. Which again, nature is amazing. How each animal is adapted to do certain things, and maybe what's energy efficient for one might be the polar opposite for another. And in the case with kangaroos, I think this might be the case. One thing that I didn't really know about kangaroos is that they have a very good hearing. So like some other animals, such as cats, they're able to move their ears in different directions without moving the rest of their head. So not something that I would have guessed, is just a cool little fact. They're able to really hear and distinguish sound, and to move their ears in all different directions. And like all marsupials, kangaroos are born extremely early relative to other animals. It's basically the equivalent of humans giving birth during the 7th week of pregnancy. But what's also interesting is that and one thing to do with pregnancy is that they can. It's said that they can adjust their gestation period, just fancy word for meaning how long they're pregnant for before giving birth. They can adjust that to be able to, just in case if there's an immediate threat present that it's not convenient to give birth, they can sort of delay that process. And they travel from the birth canal as little more than an embryo, so super early. And that's by blindly propelling through the mother's fur to the safety of the pouch. So with marsupials, we know that they have this pouch that is used as a sort of protective barrier for the babies, and they will spend several months developing there before they finally leave to explore the world. But they are born very early. Young kangaroos are called joeys. So we saw this with koalas as well. So koalas were their babies were named joeys because we have animals that are native to Australia, and they will sometimes jump headfirst into their mother's pouch when they get frightened, which is something cute. But they will jump headfirst right in there if they sense danger or if they're scared. And a quick fact is that kangaroos are unable to walk backwards, whether they're like anatomically, kinesthetically unable to walk backwards. That is another question. I just don't know if they would much rather not. The tail is positioned in a way that would make this a very challenging task. So there's absolutely no reason for them to walk backwards. They can, turn and jump forwards instead of walking backwards. But no one has ever seen a kangaroo try to walk backwards before. And the kangaroo is represented on the Australian coat of arms, right alongside the emu, which is another amazing animal that I'd like to talk about on another episode of the podcast. And female kangaroos can determine the sex of their offspring. So super interesting. I don't know how they do that. They can even delay gestation, which we just talked about. And this is to really ensure the highest chance of survival for their young. But the fact that they can determine the gender of their offspring, I don't know how researched this fact is, how researchers would even know, as maybe they act different or behave different depending on the gender of the offspring. I'm not exactly sure, but that is something to look into for sure. Kangaroos are herbivores, so let's talk about their diet. They eat grass and flowers and leaves, ferns, moss, and sometimes insects. I personally am very grateful that these animals are herbivores, because if they had a carnivorous digestive system and huge canines in their mouth, and they boxed around. If they jumped up to you and started boxing you, this would be a very formidable opponent. So I'm very thankful that these, and I'm sure Australians are very thankful that kangaroos are indeed herbivores, and their digestive system, and as well. In terms of mechanical digestion, they have special teeth that allow them to cut grass and shrubs that are very close to the ground, and also they have molars. So those are mainly incisors, but the molars will grind vegetation in their mouth. And they will regularly lose teeth because of wear and tear, but they will be replaced with new teeth. And I think that koalas had that same same sort of mechanism in terms of regrowth of teeth. But something interesting about what they do with their food is that they regurgitate it and re-chew it before it's ready to be totally digested. This is sort of the same thing that's seen in cows, and I'm not sure if many of you have heard of this before, but this regurgitation process and re-entry back into the digestive system helps with the digestive process, and that is by breaking it down into the smallest of food particles for the easiest digestion. So that is why. So if you've ever seen something throw up and then eat it back again, animals that do this on a daily basis, that is why. We're getting into the last two facts here with the kangaroo. Their main risks are humans that hunt kangaroos for meat and hide, with many animals, exotic or not. Hunting is often a problem. Poaching is always a problem, especially with primates and with other, amazing animals. So it's just that their main risk is humans in terms of hunting and poaching. So the 4 species of great kangaroos that we mentioned in the beginning of the episode are not endangered, which is really good news for kangaroos. But according to the IUCN's Red List of Threatened Species, there are many other species of tree kangaroos and rat kangaroos that are listed as either near threatened, vulnerable, endangered, or even critically endangered. So not all kangaroo species are safe in that degree, but the 4 species of great kangaroo that many people associate kangaroos with are not endangered. So that's the bright side sort of thing. So those of you out there that are new to the podcast or returning, I always love to end the show with sort of something to do with the name of the animal. So something interesting, maybe there's a story, and in this case there is a little story about it. So the word kangaroo comes from the Aboriginal Gugu Yimithir peoples' word for the gray kangaroo, which is gangaroo, which is spelt Gangurru. And I apologize if I really butchered the Aboriginal name there, which I most likely did. But the word was first recorded as kangaroo with, instead of kangaroo, it was 2 O's there instead of that middle A, or kangaroo in 1770 by a British explorer named James Cook. And there was a few different stories as to James Cook and something to do with misunderstandings or whatnot. But apparently this is the most accurate description of how it came to fruition. So thank you all so very much for tuning in. I hope that I was entertaining for the time that you listened. Maybe you're asleep, maybe you're still awake or whatnot. You could always listen to another episode, or you can research more about kangaroos if you'd like. Maybe watch a nature documentary or something. So again, as I stated in the beginning of the podcast, there's a social media account that you can follow. That's RWAF podcast under Steph Wolf. And you can go ahead and follow me on there, and we can kind of start to communicate a little bit as to what else you guys want to see. Maybe there's a segment of the show you'd like to see. Maybe there's an animal specifically you'd like for me to cover, and I absolutely encourage you guys to reach out. So thank you very much, and I'll see you on the next episode with another animal. Take care.